The billionaire's voice roared like thunder, slicing through the elegance of the upscale restaurant. Every spoon paused halfway to lips. Every conversation hit a sudden halt. But what no one could have predicted, not the guests, not the staff, was the quiet, composed way the waitress replied, a response so powerful it dropped the room into complete silence. It was one of those slow, rainy Tuesday nights when Veronica clocked in for her shift at a Elysian table. This wasn't just any eatery. It was the high-end spot, the place where the wealthy dined like royalty. Plates here? They cost more than her rent. Guests? They expected every grin to be polished, every dish to arrive with flawless perfection. At just 24, Veronica had already served more entitled guests than she cared to remember. She'd smiled through arrogance, endured rude demands, and kept her cool even when disrespected. But that night brought someone she'd only heard whispers about. Mr. Carson Hale. A name etched in boardrooms. A legend in business schools. A man whose very reputation walked ahead of him. He entered the restaurant with that unmistakable swagger, his mere presence stealing attention before he even spoke a word. Billionaire. Media mogul. Known for his sharp tongue and swift decisions. He didn't just fire executives, he obliterated them. He wasn't above humiliating the waitstaff just to get a laugh from his crowd. He was feared, admired, and utterly unchallenged.
And tonight?
Veronica was assigned to serve his table. Everything, at first, ran as smooth as a string quartet. Orders were taken without a hitch. She poured their vintage wine with grace. She even remembered the billionaire's unique request, lemon wedges with absolutely no seeds. Details mattered to people like him. And she delivered. But then it happened. The moment that cracked the air like glass. She placed the plate before him, his filet mignon, exactly as ordered. Or so she thought. "This is not medium rare," he snapped, his voice exploding like a cannon, slamming the plate onto the table with enough force to rattle the glassware around it. Heads turned. Eyes widened. "I'm sorry, sir," Veronica replied gently, already reaching for the plate to replace it. But he wasn't finished. "Oh no. You think this is service?" he growled, his voice climbing. "I spend thousands to eat here. And you serve me like I'm some kid at a college diner?" The entire restaurant froze. Conversations died instantly. Every fork in the room was suspended in the air. Veronica stood motionless. Her cheeks were burning hot, but she didn't break. Her gaze held firm, unflinching. She inhaled slowly, then replied in a voice soft yet unshakable. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I treat every guest with respect, whether they're having a sandwich or a steak. And you're always welcome to do the same." And with that, the entire restaurant fell dead silent. The tension was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. Even the pianist at the grand piano missed a note, his hands too stunned to move. "Mr. Hale?" He blinked, stared, speechless. Veronica didn't wait around for his reaction. With poise that came from deep within, she picked up the plate with grace and turned away, walking calmly back toward the kitchen. Her hands trembled just slightly as she placed the dish down. But her face?
Calm.
Collected. Ready to move on. The head chef glanced at her, eyes wide. But she didn't need sympathy. She wasn't here for drama. She just wanted to do her job and get home. Back at table 6, Mr. Carson Hale sat unusually quiet. His entourage exchanged awkward glances, avoiding eye contact altogether. The man who normally commanded every room he stepped into had just been put in his place by a 24-year-old waitress. But instead of rage, he tapped his fingers lightly on the table, deep in a place he hadn't visited in years' memory. Suddenly, a scene from long ago resurfaced. Before the media empires, before the penthouse meetings and flashing cameras, he had been just Carson. A broke college dropout, hustling through night shifts at a dusty diner in his hometown. One freezing night, he slipped, dropped a tray of food onto a man in a fine suit. The businessman had erupted in fury, shaming him in front of every customer. Carson hadn't even gotten the chance to say sorry. He remembered the heat in his cheeks, the way his hands balled into fists at his sides. That night had scarred him, igniting a fire to never feel powerless again. And yet here, he was repeating that same humiliation. Except now, he was the one dishing it out. Something inside him shifted. 15 minutes passed. Veronica returned with a new plate, placing it down with quiet elegance. "Medium rare," she said. No sarcasm. No bitterness. Just pure professionalism. He looked at her longer than he meant to. "Thank you," he replied, and he meant it. That night, Carson Hale didn't raise his voice again. He ate in silence. He watched her float through the restaurant like calm waters, smiling at guests, refilling drinks, passing fresh bread to the busboy who looked like he hadn't eaten all day. She never looked his way again. But he kept watching. After dinner, instead of leaving a tip, Carson Hale left something different. He placed a sealed envelope on the table, neatly addressed to Veronica. Then he walked out. No grand exit. No words. Veronica found it after clearing the table, expecting a complaint. Her stomach tightened. But when she opened it, everything changed. A cashier's check. Not $100. Not $1,000. $50,000. She stared at it, heart thudding in her chest. Checked again. It was real. No note. No explanation. Just her name, written in clean, deliberate script. The kind that says this is no mistake. She rushed to the manager. "Did Mr. Hale say anything before leaving?" The manager shrugged, just smiled, and said the food was great. Back in her tiny apartment, the check sat beside her overdue bills and battered nursing textbooks. She called her brother and cried, not because she was broken, but because for once she wasn't. Across the city, Carson Hale sat alone in his penthouse. And for once, he wasn't chasing margins or making deals.
He was thinking about that moment.
That sentence. That girl who stood her ground with nothing but dignity. And somehow, it shook him more than a hostile boardroom ever had. Months later, the bell above a quiet diner chimed. Veronica looked up from wiping tables. Her breath caught. It was him, Carson Hale, in his tailored black suit, but different.
Softer.
Holding not a phone but a small envelope and a quiet smile. "I never got to thank you," he said. She blinked. "For what?" "For reminding me people still speak from the heart." He placed the envelope in her hands and walked away. No spotlight, no drama. Inside wasn't a check. This time it was a letter. "Dear Veronica, in my world, power silences voices. But you didn't flinch. That one sentence shifted something in me. I've started a foundation, the Veronica Grant Initiative, for women like you who give and give, even when the world gives them nothing back. I hope you'll lead it." Her legs nearly gave out. The waitress, once hushed by hardship, was now being offered a voice, a platform, a seat at a table she'd only ever served. Weeks later, the world would know her name, not as a waitress, but as a symbol of dignity, compassion, and resilience. And every time someone asked Carson Hale why her, he'd smile, shake his head, and say, because when the whole room went quiet, she was the only one brave enough to speak.